Lucas should never have opened that drawer. He knew at the instant he pulled out the heavy piece of wood and heard the dry creak echo through his grandmother's silent room. It wasn't ordinary curiosity. It was that strange feeling in his chest, as if something was about to shift. The house still smelled of her perfume, mixed with medicine and old furniture. The wake had been that morning. Relatives had already left. And now, alone in that room, Lucas felt he was crossing an invisible boundary. Inside the drawer there were no jewels, no money, no romantic letters. There was a simple old box tied with string. It didn't seem like a gift from the past. It seemed like a warning. Even so, he opened it. And at that exact moment, without knowing it, Lucas took the first step towards discovering that his entire life had been built on a lie carefully protected for decades. Inside the box were old photos. Many photos. Some in black and white, others almost colorless. In all of them, the same woman, his grandmother Beatriz. Young, happy, different from the fragile image he had kept of her recent years. In several photos, she appeared next to a man Lucas had never seen before. He smiled naturally, held her waist, seemed to belong to a life Lucas had never known. On the back of one of the photos, a name was handwritten. Miguel. Lucas felt a strange pang. His grandfather's name was Roberto. It had always been Roberto. So who was Miguel? As he flipped through the photos, something became too clear to ignore. This wasn't just any friendship. It was an entire story, recorded on paper, hidden inside a locked drawer for a lifetime. The following photos were even worse. Beatriz pregnant. Beatriz holding a baby. Beatriz smiling next to a small, blonde, light-eyed child. On the back, another note, Padrinho my world. Lucas felt the ground disappear beneath him. His grandmother always said she never had children. She always repeated it with the same phrase in the same way. And now there was proof that it wasn't true. The box continued to hold more things. Folded documents, newspaper clippings, yellowed envelopes. Each item seemed to scream that this story no longer wanted to remain hidden. When Lucas picked up the first newspaper clipping and read the headline, his body froze. Car accident. 2 deaths. A father and a son. The names matched. Miguel. Padrinho. The date was decades ago. And Beatriz was alive. Alone. In silence. Lucas could barely breathe. He sat on the bed, trying to understand how this pain had never been mentioned. How someone lives an entire life after losing a husband and son and never talks about it. But the box wasn't finished yet. Deep down, there was a recent birth certificate. Very recent. The printed name made Lucas's heart race. It was his name, his date of birth. But his parents' names were different. They weren't Ana and Fernando. They were Carla and Pedro. Lucas's world shattered right there. Because Ana and Fernando, his supposed parents, had always been a closed story. Dead in an accident. And now that paper said something else. It said that everything he believed about his origins was wrong. Stunned, Lucas tried to ignore it. He tried to think it was a mistake, an old document, anything. But when he searched the names on his cell phone, the truth began to close in like a trap. Carla Andrade, deceased. Pedro Andrade, deceased. Both in traffic accidents. The same type of accident. The same end. The same story that seemed to repeat itself like an unbreakable cycle. Lucas realized that this wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. It was silence. It was someone trying to protect something or someone from a truth too big to bear since childhood. And the further he went, the more he understood that the drawer didn't hide secrets out of malice. It hid pain. In the attic of the house, Lucas found the last piece. A blue folder with adoption documents. His name again. His age. 5 years old. His grandmother's signature. Beatriz wasn't just his grandmother. She was his guardian. His protector. His last attempt to keep the family alive. Inside the folder, a letter written by her explained everything. She spoke of the son she almost lost, the husband she truly lost, the grandson she raised alone, and the great-grandson fate tried to take away as well. She didn't believe in curses, but she was afraid. Afraid enough to erase names, change stories, invent deaths that never existed. All so that Lucas could grow up without carrying the weight of a tragedy that seemed to haunt his family. The letter trembled in Lucas's hands. He now understood every worried look, every exaggerated prohibition, every prayer before bed. Beatriz didn't want to control her life. She wanted to save it. She lived for decades afraid of losing someone else. And when she realized she couldn't stop the world, she tried at least to control the truth. Silence was the way she found to love. A twisted, heavy, but real love. Lucas cried there, sitting on the attic floor, not because of the lie, but because of the loneliness his grandmother carried alone for so many years. That night, Lucas didn't sleep. He spent hours reviewing photos, reading letters, understanding a story that had never been told to him. For the first time, he met his grandfather Miguel. He met the first Padrinho. He met the Pedro who survived. He met his real parents. He knew the pain that shaped Beatriz. At dawn, something had changed inside him. The truth hadn't destroyed his identity. It had completed it. He wasn't the product of a lie. He was the product of a desperate attempt at love. An attempt to break a cycle that seemed eternal. Days later, Lucas put everything in an album. He didn't hide it anymore. The drawer remained open. The house no longer felt heavy. At the cemetery, before his grandmother's grave, he spoke in a low voice, saying that now he understood. That there was no hatred, only gratitude. He promised to live without fear. He promised not to run from the truth. He promised to honor every name in that story by living fully. The locked drawer was never about hiding the past. It was about protecting the future. And now that Lucas was ready, the truth could finally breathe.